See, I'm at the point in this conversation where we've talked for a while now. We're probably going to have to split this one up again. We have talked for a while now, and we've still been unpacking the things connected to it. And this is the difficulty with these things that people go, oh, it's bad. Oh, it's overused. And we can talk this to death. And yet, I think we've pretty much shown there is still a place for it. It can be used effectively. So other than, hey, guys, watch the overuse of this trope, what exactly has this so-called feminist criticism done other than made male writers more hesitant to include female characters because you may have to imperil them?
Yeah.
That's what sticks in me about this. That what good has it done? Where have we ended up? It's like we fridged the fridge. We've made ourselves feel good. We've backpacked. We've furthered the backpatted. We've furthered the discourse. But how has this led to more inclusivity for women in comics?
It hasn't.
It hasn't.
And it's not even just women. I've talked to you before. So in my fantasy romance story, I have Asian coded characters.
Mm-hmm.
So far, they've only shown up in a one shot.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most stressful one shot I've ever written, drawn a cover from, and posted. Like, I sent you the cover and said,
yeah, that's right.
Could this possibly be seen as insensitive?
Yep.
Just because I was paranoid that people were going to be like, oh, how dare you? You're not this. It's like, if you're going, there's this, something I've seen is they want writers to have more diversity.
Right.
But if you write anything that's not your lived experience,
yeah,
people get mad. And I get that the balance is, and what they're saying is, we want it more in the background characters. We want you to show diversity in the world around it. But at the same time, it's like, I'm most comfortable writing straight characters because that's what I mostly am.
And so quite honestly, trust, I've been having a lot of conversations like this right now. If you are straight as an arrow, don't attempt it. Because all that's going to happen is you're going to get a straight coded gay relationship and it's not going to feel authentic.
Yeah. And it's like, for me, I can write straight characters. I can probably do lesbian couples.
Right.
But for one, I never understood fandom obsession with gay couples. Like,
particularly superhero, it's the idea of the secret identity in the closet.
I mean, I get that, but it's not even just that. I've seen it in, so like back when I was in the crossover of How to Train Your Dragon, Rise of the Guardians, Brave and Tangled, people wanted Hiccup and Jack Frost as a couple. And I'm like, I can see them as friends. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I was there for Kingdom Hearts 2. And Axel and
that actually creeped me out. The yaoi stuff unnerves me.
Yeah, and so it's never done anything for me. Like, okay, if you as a reader, you enjoy it, okay, I just don't get it. It's never done anything for me. So it's like, but I definitely don't think I could write a relationship like that, even as a background, because it's like, it's two men. That is not how my brain works. Two women, okay. A man and a woman, okay. Two men, I'm sorry, I'm out. I don't think I can do that.
Yeah, there are different dynamics. I mean, that's why I really enjoyed the Tim Drake storyline in the comics. It got so overshadowed by the John Kent shit. And I really thought Tim Drake's story was better because it's like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I am. I don't want to put a label on me because I'm dating a guy for the first time. I don't know if I'm going to like it. Let's just see how this, I thought that was much more, well, at least much more in alignment with my own experience, the experience of my friends, than, oh, here's this guy at 17 years old being called a man, picking winners and losers in social justice social justice arguments and being really overtly sexualized as a 17-year-old.
Yeah. And I think the Tim Drake storyline, it works a lot better than Jean Grey going up to Bobby Drake, and it is Bobby Drake, right?
Iceman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her going, Bobby, you're gay.
Oh, barf. Barf, 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 barf. Oh, if I didn't hate Jean before that, yeah.
Like that, a telepath of all people. Like, I know there have been
out the dude.
Yeah, even to himself. Like, that made no sense. And like, so teenage him from an alternate timeline is gay. So suddenly adult Bobby is like, oh, I'm gay. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Do you remember how upset you got about Lorna?
Well, and the truth is, in real life, when someone does that, when someone outs you like that, it's this, you immediately become the world's biggest homophobe in that moment. Fuck you, I know this, you just react because you're being exposed. That was awful. That was just so awful. Bad.
And that's why people had such a backlash to it.
Yeah, it was bad.
It wasn't because of homophobia. I really don't think that book was written well.
No, too many bizarre. Of those books are written like propaganda, trying to get people to come out, as opposed to just telling a story that can make somebody feel seen and more comfortable with these aspects of themselves that they may not feel okay with.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I do think that's men really struggle with how they feel about grief, how they feel about sadness, how they feel about not being in control. And women do too, but let's be honest, we have more social license to be hot messes about it. We've talked about that before.
Yeah. And we're also encouraged to explore our emotions.
We're given a much greater vocabulary. We're trained with a much greater emotional vocabulary.
Yeah. And I grew up reading stuff like A Secret Garden and A Little Princess and Jane Austen, which are very much about emotions and feelings, whereas boys, and it's like, I do think there is a difference. You get boys, they want an action story, they want adventure, they don't necessarily want to read about emotions generally. I canvas this generally, hashtag not all men.
Yeah. You know what? It's not that they don't want to read emotions. It's different. Like, I hate to keep bringing up She-Hulk, but it's like the only well-known kind of woman's perspective for women's show, right? But the whole, how do I put this? The question of why doesn't Jen just tell her Bridezilla friend to fuck off? And explaining that to a guy is almost impossible because it's this crash course in girl world.
See, admittedly, I'm one of those people who I at least hope I would say something.
I thought I would be too. And I wasn't. Yeah, I had that, servant bridesmaids experience. And I'm not, I dropped it on Twitter at one point who it was, but I won't do it here because this is a bit easier to find. Tweets sort of disappear into ether. But yeah, there was this wedding and I was in the wedding party, and it was carrying the shoes, bringing things down, organizing things. I had to pay to bring, at my own expense, to bring back these GoPro cameras that the bride and groom had brought down to document the whole thing, using their friends as props in this sort of home movie about how amazeballs their life is. They did 2.5 hours of photos around the city. It was a destination wedding. So it was this big photo shoot. I had to entertain all the guests that were getting sloshed on vodka tonics while they were doing this photo shoot. Paid my own way to bring this stuff back because you have to pay for bags now, right?
Yeah.
And the person ghosted me. They completely ghosted me after that. They left the stuff that they asked me to bring back because they wanted me to bring it back so that they could go on their honeymoon and not have to tote it around.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. They were cheap. They wanted me to give them a permission structure so that they wouldn't have to pay for the rehearsal dinner. And customarily, that's, the couple or the couple's family paying for the rehearsal dinner. It's a thank you to your friends and family who being there for your special day. They wanted me to give them a justification for making that be the equivalent of a cash bar, right? And you never think you're going to take it. You're like, I'm going to stand up for myself, but you don't want to be that person because then you quote unquote ruin the wedding, right? And this is something guys, I think, don't, it's just not an experience. I think that if they're put in a similar situation, because it's that same thing of, oh, everybody's on the trip and everybody's doing this stuff. They're playing game or they're playing a sport or something like that. And some guy says something that rubs you the wrong way. You don't want to ruin everybody else's good time, right? It's that similar thing. But I was an absolute doormat. And because to me, I think that is the loss of a friendship, the conflict, is sort of the fridging for women, that friendship that breaks down, right? And that's why, you have the enemy, like in Batwoman, she was her sister, or it's always like a former friend or somebody that you guys should get along, that that sounds so weird. Guys listening to this are probably, that's fucking stupid, that's the equivalent of your girlfriend getting murdered and shoved in a fridge. But in a lot of ways, it really is.
Yeah, because women depend on that. Like, I've never actually had a friend group and I don't have many female friends.
Right.
Like, at this point, I think you're the only one.
And I'm only kind of a girl.
Which is probably why it works.
No, I get it though, right? Because you're a force of nature. I mean, that's the guys are like, oh, song's amazing. Like, she's such a force of nature. I'm like, she's great, isn't she? But
force of nature is a new one. I like that.
Yeah, you get into the I saw star power in you immediately, and that's like, come on, do the thing. But that female competitiveness, that the whole cat fight thing, it's because there's this, and it does come into the old school patriarchal competition for mates, right? The Cinderella and her sisters thing.
Yeah.
There's only one prince, and so you're either Cinderella or you're the ugly stepsister. And I guess because I'm not wired that way, because I don't identify with those characters, I don't get into that competition.
Yeah.
But it is a very real thing that when you are a woman who is exceptional, you got to hide that to an extent, because the minute you show that, every woman in your orbit, whether she's aware of it or not, does try to tear you down.
It's competition.
It's really messed up.
And that's why I never understood this idea of women stick together and this feminine sisterhood I see feminists talk about. And I'm like, have you ever actually been in a girl's locker room?
That's bullshit.
It's not like that. That's
the funny thing about locker room talk, right? In guys' locker rooms, it's all guys posturing at women's expenses to make themselves look big. In women's bathrooms, there's a reason women don't go to the bathroom alone, because everybody, people just shit talk other women. And I will not be a part of it. And I will actually tell people to cut it the fuck out. And of course, then I'm the bitch.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't care.
I actually had a situation at work recently where this lady was like, oh yeah, well, it basically came down to, you must have girlfriends because you're so good at makeup.
Huh.
And I'm like, it wasn't quite that. It was like, oh yeah, I don't really have a lot of girlfriends. Oh, well, how did you get so good at makeup? That was more how the conversation went. And I'm like, because I practiced.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's part of the reason for you. It's because you moved around so much.
Yeah.
That I think that's a big part of it. With me, it's a common interest problem. And
Yeah.
that's been the absolute wonderful thing I admit about the MCU. A lot of the female friends that I find legit trustworthy have come through fandom. And it's just because of a common interest thing. And as much as I despise J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter was actually very useful for that too. I met a lot of really good people through Potter fandom. And even though we all sort of RIP right now, it was something to talk about so you could get to know each other.
Yeah.
And there is this thing in girl world where it's like there's this, I don't know if you've experienced this weird forced agreement. That it's why I love doing nerdette streams, because we can disagree. I mean, I bust her balls on Sandman all the time and she just laughs, and it's not a ha 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 fake laugh. She legitimately finds it funny, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at what I said at the opening of how I was scared to tell you misspelled Austin.
I know. And I'm
I'm
like,
what if
no,
she thinks
tell
it's
me.
real?
I mean, you saw it. I was like, that's fucking hilarious. I was so damn tired. But yeah, it really is. Women don't do that. It's this
No.
weird, and nobody tells you directly not to do it. And I think that's why there's this, the whole mansplaining thing. The code really is different. And one of the frustrations is that, I try to explain it to guys, like, this is how women work. Don't do it. Women are gonna think things when you
Yeah.
say things like that. And these guys say all the reasons why it's not right and it's not logical, and they may be 100% right, but that doesn't change the fact that that's how it's interpreted. It's an entirely different set of social codes.
Yeah.
And
And
I think, what do you think about this? I don't know. I'm just pulling this out of my ass to try to make sense of this whole thing right now. So I probably will misspell something in a thumbnail. But but it's almost like, if a husband dies, my mother, when I lost my stepfather not long ago, and then there was another illness in the family where not the extended family, where the wife got sick. And my mother, having come out of 2 years of being a caregiver, saw all the food. Do you need anything, to the man whose wife was ill, older man, wife was ill. And it was food, and it was company, and it was this, and it was that. And my mother said, just in sort of an unguarded moment, people don't do this for women when their husband's in the hospital.
because women are still expected to be able to take care of it
That's
themselves,
right.
whereas men, oh, this makes me so mad.
Yeah.
Men don't even know how to clean their kitchen.
Yeah. Because they're not taught.
And
They're not made to learn.
they're
I know one guy. He's a client. And I know one guy, he keeps a really clean kitchen. And he's not gay.
yeah. And so men don't know how.
You don't believe me?
No, I believe
I'm kidding.
it. But
I'm kidding.
the thing is, there's this kind of joke photo I see posts come through, usually on Facebook occasionally,
Yeah.
where it's an easy boy chair, a TV on the floor,
Yeah.
and a gaming system.
That's
And
me.
guys are like, this is perfect. And I'm like, I would not go out with a man who lives like that. Because
Well,
you
because
can tell
where's
me,
his
oh,
money going?
well, it's, and when I try to push back a bit, people are like, oh, well, he's saving his money for the future. And I'm like, okay,
No,
but
he ain't.
no, it even more, it's like, okay, but you don't respect yourself enough and you don't take care of yourself. It's like, my mom has this saying that, a couch can make or break a relationship,
That's very
because
true.
because women especially, they want the couch. They want somewhere they can sit and talk and be together.
You know what the other side, because I was that guy. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you at one
Not
point.
really.
What it was being a girl guy is fucking expensive, okay?
Yes.
Like, you need the shoes, you need the clothes, you need the hair, you need the makeup, and you need the PS5, right? I think the reason that more women don't get into gaming is, well, do I buy the game system or do I buy a pair of shoes and a purse? Right? And yeah, guys spend money on sneakers,
Yeah.
but that's not considered essential. You can have one pair of sneakers. You choose to have 40. With women, you actually need shoes that match the outfits and different shoes for different formalities and this, that, next thing. The heel can't be too high, it can't be too low, blah, 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 blah. But I was putting so much money into my business development and all the things I needed just for my job that $400 for an IKEA couch just wasn't happening right then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I see with that. It's like, all right, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Most women would not give that guy a chance. And there are reasons, because one of the things you have to check is this because he's got hustle or is this because he's irresponsible with money?
Yeah.
And that's the other problem with the fridge trope, right? Like, the fridge is often the moment where the guy owns his doesn't own his shit, cleans up and becomes more responsible and starts adulting in her memory. But a disaster has to happen before he'll do that. And that is a great point of frustration for me in writing.
Yeah. And to me, it's also do you appreciate a home? Because, like,
well, yeah, are you going to appreciate the extra effort a woman goes through for you?
Yeah. It's like going back to the couch. My mom wants the couch for the family angle.
Right.
And my ex-stepdad, he hated getting her a couch. It was...
How can you hate a couch?
Because he was being forced to spend money on something he didn't want to.
Oh, I see. It was a power struggle.
There was a point, there was a lot of drama surrounding it, but at one point we left and he battered the couch and just trashed it. Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Yeah. And part of it was to fit it into the dumpster, but it was also just hatred for my mom.
Wow.
Yeah. My family life has been very dysfunctional.
But I mean, in a way, better the couch than your mom.
Yes.
Right? Like, holy shit. That's scary.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, like you said, will you appreciate the effort a woman puts into to make the home nice?
Right.
Because, look, obviously there are couples who they get married, they don't want kids. But in general, you get a man and a woman together, the woman especially will want a family. We do have that biological urge to nest.
I shall take your word for it.
Okay, feminine-minded women.
No, that is a real thing. I just don't have it. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. No, it's like, true. It's true, right? I mean, I got the cats, but I like cats because they're assholes. But yeah. Overall, this statement is true.
Yeah, you want to make your surroundings nice, and it's not even just a woman being spoiled and wanting luxury. She does it for her significant other too.
It also
that's
just
her
feels
way
like
of caring.
It's a life stage, right? You look around and say, I have built something. Yeah.
So it's like, I have a limited budget, but it's like I have very little space, but I've made my room special and it makes me happy.
Right.
And it's much better than when I had a room where I didn't have anything. Right. Like, now I can look around and it's like, oh, I've got this, I've got that. It's pretty. I've got fake flowers on the top of my shelf. It makes me happy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I think that's an overall human thing, but I do think it manifests differently. And
Yeah.
I think this is significant because you can't just when you're writing a female lead, and as we're getting more female leads, we're seeing how they tackle this problem. And I did find one of the comments from the last video very interesting, where they talked about the ending of Captain Marvel and
Yeah.
how her blasting, the
That was a
antagonist.
very good
It's
point.
a really, really good comment that he blasting the antagonist into the wall was intended as this sign of girl power, but it was actually her losing control.
Yeah. And like
And
I said, too often I see these strong women who are just written as men with breasts.
but even a
And
guy wouldn't do that. Like that was that weird.
well,
That's
it's
where
taken
that's
even
where
further, where girl power is used as an excuse to make a woman a jerk.
See, that's the
And
woman baby as opposed to the man baby. That
yeah,
angry, like what they're calling the Fleabag era now, the just burn it all down and hurt people and not care. I'm
I'm not
way
fond
not
of
into
that.
that.
No.
But
But
that
at the
that is
same
a
time,
trope now.
I think it is a natural progression of, going back to, we've mentioned Sex in the City before,
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, this woman makes a complete mess of her life. People tried to emulate that in real life. They discovered it creates a total mess. And so now the characters are reflecting that, but we don't want to admit that we're wrong.
Right.
So, oh no, burning things down, that's sometimes it's seen as a flaw, but sometimes it's like, oh no, it's just how the world works. And I'm like, not quite. That's
Well,
very
that's
immature.
why I think the whole Lena Dunham brand and the show Girls was so toxic.
Exactly. Because
That show, oh my God.
like, at least from what I understand, Fleabag addresses that she's not in the right.
Right.
And
That's right.
she is making mistakes, and her mistakes do come back to haunt her.
Yeah.
Whereas something like Girls, there is no questioning. It's just, this is what I do, so it must be right.
But that's another one where she does all this horrible stuff, but horrible stuff happens to her, and so it's okay, and she feels bad, and so it really. I had to pop in and out of Girls. I found it legitimately disturbing
Mm-hmm.
in the lack of accountability and how little it actually said about what's going on in the psyche of there are absolutely women like that, but what's going on in the psyche of women who do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's not something to aspire to, and I don't even think it's something to validate. It's fair to say this is right, but when say I think too many people see things like Wolverine waking up in a collection of JD bottles as oh, look at that cool lifestyle. He can drink so much. But no, that's an indication Logan is sad.
Yeah.
And so many of these cues, and I think there's been too much emulation of media. I think that cultivation theory has become something of a self-fulfilling prophecy of people see things in media and think that this is what I'm supposed to be, as opposed to don't take these images unquestioningly. Just because you see it in media doesn't mean it's good.
Well, look at the whole idea of the wine mom.
Yeah, which I can't stand.
Mm-mm.
I like my wine. I cannot stand sloppy drunk people.
No.
And cheap wine is up there with bad coffee. I can't get past the smell. It's just, and now this sounds like, oh, bougie, whatever. No, that's something I enjoy. I know it's not the most healthy thing in the world. I do have to do it in moderation. I fail at that a lot. I don't, it's not cool. It's just a thing that is, because I do have Wolverine tendencies, right? And I mean, it is, and that's something I uh see that, how do I put this? There's a different form of connection. I think women, because it's different. Our rules in society are different. what are the expectations on us are different, that coming home isn't the same, right? Because making the home and coming home are not the same thing, right? There's a big difference between creating and maintaining a home and coming home to a place that someone else has made comfortable for you. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there is a female equivalent, but there really isn't.
There really isn't. It's that loss of that the fridging represents, right? I mean, the fact that she was killed in the damn kitchen. Symbol, right?
Yeah.
But, that's the sort of thing. She was the one that made the food. She was the one that did his laundry. She was the one that patched him up when he got beat up. That support system, that security has been ripped away from a character. And it's like my mother said, women don't get that compassion when they have that loss. It's the thing of, the widow at the funeral, and they hand her the flag and say, sorry for your loss. And that's usually the last you see of her.
Yeah.
Because, she has kids to look after and she has to keep going, and this, that, the next, that struggle is expected to happen quietly.
Yeah.
And that's an issue. Because whenever somebody expresses anger, expresses frustration, expresses a sense of, I don't know what, just that I am not dealing with this. Anger is a part of grief. It's like, oh, you're being, you're being this or that or whatever. It's like, yes, there's a lot of stuff. We talk about male disposability, right? But none of these things exist in a vacuum. There's a form of female disposability. There's a form of male disposability.
Well, I mean, another thing I talked about when it comes to fridging is it's like, you can kill a superhero,
right?
But the thing is, it's like a soldier or even a cop. You kind of signed up for that possibility.
Well, but also a superhero has a hope in hell of fighting back.
Yeah. But my main point is, it's like, there's only so much you can feel bad about it, because that is part of the deal in a way.
See,
whereas when you get the innocent, that's very different.
See, I think they've even fucked that up in comics, because I mean, the way they killed Beast Boy, but not really to kick off Dark Crisis, that was some bullshit. That was just cheap. And what the hell was it? And he wasn't even really dead or whatever. I don't know. I lost the plot literally on that book. But that was something done for the splash page, right? Yeah. It's like when Flash runs so fast through the Speed Force that he turns into a skeleton kind of thing. It's like, oh, that's cool, right?
Well, that comes back to something I talked about before with, it's the rule of cool.
Right,
does it
the rule
look
of cool.
Good? Yeah. Will it make people go, ooh?
Yeah.
Or does it actually work for the story?
Yeah. And the fridging, I mean, yes, okay, someone turning into a skeleton, it seems very painful, everything like that, whatever, but it's an active gesture. It's seen as sacrifice, as opposed to victimization. And the whole thing of a fridging, it's supposed to be horrifying. And it's all about the emotions of the person who is left behind. And when a male superhero is getting beat up all the time, and somebody in Batman's case, it's Alfred, who continues to have to patch him up. Anybody with any sort of empathy, that hurts them, right? Yeah. I was talking to somebody last night about how difficult it is to be a cop's wife.
Yeah.
Because of that, because you have to see, and you're helpless. You can't do anything about it. And you hurt when they hurt. And that is it's the Peggy Carter thing again, that's an unsung hero thing. And you don't think about that. You don't think about how hard the superhero lifestyle is on the people in a superhero's life, because they're supposed to be supportive. They're supposed to understand they're out saving the world. Don't you get it? They're doing important things. That's toxic as fuck.
There was a point in the J. Michael Straczynski run on Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And it Peter was in the Avengers at that point. So it also kind of spilled over into some of the Avengers comics at the time, I believe.
Yeah.
There was a scene of MJ playing pool with Captain America.
Right.
And they were talking.
Yeah.
And they were talking about it. But I think it was in the main run, there was a point where she said, I thought when we went to Avengers Tower, I would finally, army wives, they get to talk to each other. And so when I got to Avengers Tower, I thought maybe I would be able to find someone who I could relate to for the first time.
Yeah.
So Straczynski dealt with it because I love that run.
Yeah. And I mean, they are starting to, I mean, in the video game, they also had her go, I don't want you to always save me. And they don't, because it's like, oh, the failure to save them. Like it's one thing to feel reassured that support when it's female to male, it's support. When it's male to female, it's protection. And I wish they'd be the same thing. Because when we don't interconnect the two, when we don't make a Venn diagram of the two, people forget that a big deal of supporting your man is protecting his feelings, protecting his ego, and that's something I'm not very good at.
It's more of an emotional, almost spiritual protection while he provides physical protection.
That's right. And I'm not comfortable with the physical protection angle because that can turn. But that, and because I don't fit, I've got this real appreciation of female labor in that way, and how hard it actually is, how much work it actually takes to women suffer in silence a lot, and not just because of cute shoes that hurt your feet.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you're hesitant on the physical protection because it can turn.
Yeah.
I think the moment that sold Conan to me,
right,
as a character,
yeah,
is there's a point in the very first story, The Phoenix on the Sword, where it's mentioned that his harem girls have never known rough treatment.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I can respect that. Now, this is also in a scene where it's pointed out because they are being brutalized because someone who took his throne and is now claiming his girls as war prizes, basically. Right. So I try not to think of that second half, but I'm like, okay, this is a man who is very strong, but he literally has these women helpless and he has always treated them well.
Yeah. So and see, my relationship with people who are bigger and stronger than me is they will always eventually use it against you because they can.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's great if someone doesn't. But, and that's much more, I think, your traditional male viewpoint on things is you constantly have to be on guard. You constantly have to be vigilant. You constantly have to be learning to block. Whereas,
and I do think that is something men don't necessarily understand about
not consciously,
of being women.
Yeah.
Like, we know that is my type, the savage barbarian prince. But I also have to be aware that there is that backlash. And I am aware of it. And so it's like, okay, I can't go for someone just because he beats the barbarian prince part. There has to be that tenderness and genuine safety and trust that comes from it, which is very difficult.
But the thing I don't like about the way things are going in terms of girl power and feminism in media right now is because I respect the feminine, Peggy Carter thing. Hey, I can put on that outfit, but I don't think I could do what she did in that Captain America scene. I think I could do what he did. I don't think I could do what she did. That's really hard. It's very, very hard to be less scared than the person going through a scary thing because she is losing. I mean, especially in that era, right? that's tough. And I think there is a lack of appreciation for the feminine strength of that era where women were not allowed to be alone. I mean, we see that in her show, right? She has to live in a rooming house for women because women were not supposed to live on their own until they were married.
Yeah.
And that when we equate strength with violence, and when we reduce the female character to something that can be taken away as opposed to something that actually protects, in some nurtures is maybe the better word, nurtures the male character, I think we're doing a disservice to both characters. There is a way of allowing men to be vulnerable through that female character without killing her.
Yeah. And that's part of why I would love to see Sagine
Yeah.
in Loki's story.
Yeah.
But like I said, she needs, if she's not soft, gentle, rose scented feminine, then I'd be very disappointed and I wouldn't care. But I could also talk about how undervalued I feel that soft rose scented feminine is, and how even difficult it is to be that in this world,
And
and
I think
how
that was,
undervalued it is.
I really thought that there was a missed opportunity with Frigga. Renee Zellweger, not Renee Zellweger, Renee Russo did a really
Yes.
good job of threading that needle, seeming regal, but yes, she was in dresses. If she was, she was a warrior at one point, but now her job's to be queen, and she's doing that job.
Yeah, and I would have loved to have seen more of her.
Oh, I
And
think
that,
she was woefully underused.
yes, there, that moment though in was it in Endgame where we got to see her in Thor. That was one of my favorite
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah. I also, little things like, when Loki's in prison, she brought him books.
Yeah.
That's a little like that. I'm like, oh my God, feels. Cause yeah, to validate a man in that culture, she brought him books, right?
Yeah.
Not a training bag. Not, he's not doing push-ups in that fucking cell.
No.
Right. And that's like, okay, there's a woman in a very binary culture with a son who's literally a shapeshifter, and she accepts him. That was a little moment where she actually, unlike Odin, who was constantly trying to mold him into what he wanted to be, she accepted him for who he was.
Yeah.
And if Odin had had more of that, it's interesting that in the Norse myth, Odin, with all his vision, infinite vision, was still sort of a dick and a warlord, right? Just because you're aware of things doesn't mean you can categorize them in a useful way.
Yeah.
And I do think that to me, the real problem with the fridging is it is a way to cause a vulnerability. I don't think it inspires a protective instinct in the lead. I disagree with the Wikipedia definition of fridging for that. It is a vulnerability. It is the ability for a character to show pain and hurt and not have to be that grim, dark, grimacing tough guy.
And it's unearned because it's such a sucker punch. Well, it tries to be.
Right. And the thing that makes me think that it actually is a vulnerability thing, not a protectiveness thing, is what happens. The inciting incident in the Injustice universe is the Joker killing Lois Lane, and Superman turns. He goes evil.
Didn't he trick Superman into killing her?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. I feel that's kind of an important caveat.
Yeah. But still, he's a guy who was Aw Gee Whiz Blue Boy Scout. He didn't need that device.
No.
They kill Lois to go the other way with him, which is the exception that proves the rule. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are characters that go on these massive sort of revenge plots, but it's not it is a permission structure. It is the only time that a guy, because otherwise it's the lone wolf, like the lone gunman, the gunslinger trope of no attachments. No, don't get me started about Star Wars and that whole thing. That's not what attachments mean in Buddhism. But it's instead of helping to ease these male superheroes out of the box they're stuck in, it reinforces the box.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it reinforces the box on the female characters as well, but wouldn't it be better if you use those love interests for them to come home to and fuck the secret identity they know, for them to come home to and then to be, I had a really bad day. Like, this was awful. A guy died on me. Like, I had him and I lost him. And you see the difference between the public face these heroes have to put on and what they tell their wives and girlfriends. I think that's way more powerful because then you can see the heroism. You can see what they're consciously doing. You see the construct of the hero, and then they go home, right? The warrior goes home. And we get that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think I cut out because I had a phone call coming in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I did not know that would happen.
Oh, on your actual device.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. So what I was saying, that was part of what I liked so much about the Barton family.
Yeah.
In the MCU is because you get that where she knows and he can talk to her about things.
And they're a team.
Yeah.
You know, that whole thing of that is not easy, you know, family of entertainers here, and you know, you miss stuff. And it was really rough. You know, that is not something families tend to be understanding about. And from her side, she can't tell the kids what's really going on because it's going to scare them. So she's trying to stall. And it's almost the army thing, right? Where no, dad's not going to be home for a while. That doesn't mean he doesn't love you. That's because he does love you. He's out there doing things to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Like that's the sort of thing that I think you can get into if you stop killing the damn love interests as a cheap, we don't know how to write adult partnerships.
Or you don't have to do one more day to make things interesting.
One more day, the comic, right?
Yeah.
Because I did think that, I mean,
No Way Home did it very well.
Yeah, you said
that was the actual
word.
Good version.
You said the magic word, Tom Holland Spider-Man. And what I thought was interesting is you notice at the end of that movie, and he goes in and she's in the coffee shop and she's expressing frustration, right? Yeah. And despite everything he's going through, all the pain and conflict that he might be feeling, he's there for her.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so beautiful. And what that this particular take on Spider-Man really understands about what makes Peter Parker special. He sticks to things. He sticks to people. He sticks to ideas. He sticks to goals.
Yeah, and that's something the comics have really struggled with over the years.
Yeah, absolutely.
But which I do think comes back to the long-running nature of comics.
Well, these comics, I mean, let's face it, everybody who's writing these comics now started off as a fan.
Yeah.
And so everybody has their idea of what a particular character is to them.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to what the character is. And it is very tough when you approach something like this to not shoehorn all your hopes and dreams into this character you legitimately love.
Yeah.
Like the fan fiction urge is super strong, and you have to put in, because you know, you have to rely on that instinct. You have to tell a good story without telling a selfish story.
Yeah. And sometimes that means you have to take yourself out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that actually editing. people's books instead of write it, because it's like, am I making this story better? Am I making this story the one I would write?
Yeah.
And you don't want to just hijack someone else's story. You have to tell the story the way it is. You know, Superman's not a bad guy. He may have these moments where he struggles with it, but you know, the audience wants Superman to be Superman because Superman's a symbol of hope.
Exactly.
And that I mean, the death of Superman, that's sort of the anti-fridge, and yet it is so damn overused now. Stop killing Superman.
That was a fridge for the audience, though.
Well, to me, in Batman versus Superman, that was
that point we didn't care because there hadn't been a good movie about him.
Well, but this is an iconic moment in comics, and so it is validating for fans to see it on the screen. And no, it's not unless it's well done.
Yeah.
And part of the problem with the Justice League movie is they had to spend way too much time bringing him back to life so you could have the full team.
Yeah.
Which, that's stupid. You shouldn't kill Superman without the Justice League, because then you can see the other characters reacting to the loss, as opposed to, oh no, that's the reason you cannot be Superman and Agent Coulson.
No.
And that's what they tried to do with that. It was just, I don't know how you feel, Song, and maybe this is the place to come in for a landing.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, killing characters in general is something that needs a reason. It shouldn't just be, we need to make something happen, let's kill someone. You need a positive explanation for it. You need an active justification. What is this going to do?
Yeah.
You know, Boromir getting killed in The Lord of the Rings shatters the Fellowship. What does this do? Not what does this make the character feel? Can you move the plot along in another way? Or is this the right call?
Yeah.
You know, and the one that I'm unpopular about now is Aerith in Final Fantasy VII. And them now, you know, saying, oh no, this, you know, oh no, it's this. And because the original Final Fantasy, my interpretation was, anyway, she was the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the story.
Yeah.
It was the explosion of Aerith's inner strength, where because she was so good and so connected with life, when Sephiroth killed her, he sealed his own fate. That was his destruction. And Final Fantasy VII's completely trashed that with the remake. And that pisses me off. Because why can't a female character actually engage in an act of sacrifice instead of an act of victimhood?
I think there's too many people who don't understand the difference.
I think you're right. Including people who, you know, self-identify as feminists and track this stuff.
I think especially them.
Well, at this point, yeah, it's just sort of so reactive, right? It's so brainless. It's just, oh, here's this button we can hit. It's bad.
Yeah.
I do think we're sort of coming out of it, but that's why I'm defending shows like, saying again, like She-Hulk, that they know they're going to piss people off. They know they're going to offend people. They know they're going to polarize. We need to. People have to start saying some contentious shit so we can get out of these silos. We can get out of these boxes.
That
and
would
it's
be
not
nice.
gonna, it's not gonna convince anybody, but it is going to bring along, it is going to evolve the people who are willing to come with it, you know?
Yeah.
So this has been two women talking again. I think this one's going to be multiple parts, because we did. If you notice some rough cuts at some points in the, we've been having audio problems all along, and we had to stop and start to stop that Zoom bug from happening in episode 2. So we're going to figure out how to break this up. Check out check out song stuff, check out my other stuff. What were we specifically saying? Your video on
The Matrix.
The Matrix. Yes, check out her video on The Matrix. And this has been Two Women Talking with Tomboy and Girly Girl. See you next time.
Bye-bye.